The game of politics is very dirty. It's a snake's pen. Unfortunately, I was not far from the age of my oldest son right now when I received my first death threat. You know, a lot of parents and families are disconnected. They're not just around the corner. You know, you used to buy a house that used to be in the same street as your parents. The fun moment's always bringing them home to meet mum for the first time. Mums can be a very intimidating woman and very direct.
Surely not.
So
I don't care what you think, I'ma just do me, and I wanna hear you sing. I got superpowers, I got superpowers, I got superpowers, working 7 days a week.
Lee Hansen, welcome to the show. Welcome to Become Your Own Superhero.
thank you. Thank you for having me.
Lee, what does become your own superhero mean to you? Putting you on the spot.
Ooh, I suppose it's harnessing your own superpower. You know, what are your values? What's your ultimate goal or self-purpose in life, and harnessing that and utilizing it for the best of your ability or the ability for others, I suppose.
So if I was to talk to your mum, Pauline Hanson, and say, Pauline, what's Lee's superpowers? What would she tell me?
She would probably say it's diplomacy. My superpower compared to her is I'm probably a little bit more diplomatic in how I speak in comparison to her, but honesty, integrity, hard work, those sorts of things.
Now, well, thank you for sharing. Now, we know talk is cheap, right? So the proof will be in the pudding. But for those that have never, ever heard of you, how would you describe who you are in the world?
I'd like to think I'm a good person. I'm an honest person. I'm quite a caring person, and I'm far from being a selfish person. My whole life, I've been someone who tries to help other people, tries to stand up for other people, tries to just be a genuine, caring, kind person. I think today's world, we see a lot of people who are in it for themselves or are very selfish in life. Whereas the individual I am, it's about being honest. What you see is what you get. Be kind to one another. Always be honest. Always do what you say you're going to do, and just be a genuinely good person. My whole life, I've tried to live by that, both in as a individual, my personal life, as well as the jobs that I've done or the career that I've had to date as well.
It's a very diplomatic answer, and as you do more of these, well, that's what we're after here. I suppose one of my first questions, Lee, is I presume a lot of well-intended people get into politics, maybe thinking along the same lines that you are, and then eventually that gets corrupted. Do you see what causes that? And if you do, what do you think it might be?
I think some people, yes, have all good intentions. Not all, unfortunately, from what I've seen. But some people do have good intentions and they get in. The game of politics is very dirty. It's a snake's pen. Unfortunately, it entices or breeds ingenuine leadership, if you put it that way. And as soon as you get into the game, there's so much politics that happens on the back end. You know, deal cutting, personal agendas driving their decision making, or you have major political parties that say toe the line. You don't have a voice. Whether you agree or disagree, this is the direction you must take. So quite often politicians, particularly with the larger parties, have to make decisions or go in a direction that's against their gut or against what their constituents want or what they personally believe. But they do it. Why? Because they want a job. Why? Because they want to get re-elected. So therefore their motivation changes very quickly. And very few will go against the grain and stand up and actually make a call and follow their true intent and leave the party and, go back to why they first entered politics in the first case.
Apart from your mum, which so far that you've seen, you've only been involved in for a few months at this point, right?
Mhm.
Which other politicians, whether they're with One Nation or other parties, do you think have those positive attributes, the sincere attributes?
Look, I've seen snippets of people over time. I must say we've just had two new senators elected into One Nation, Tyron Whitten and Warwick Stacey, and I had the privilege of going last week and seeing them sworn into Parliament. Getting to know them as well as how they've represented the party so far. I'm really proud of them, and I was proud to be a part of their swearing in. I think they are genuinely good people. They have great strengths to offer the team and will do a phenomenal job. So wholeheartedly back them 100%, and can see those qualities in them from day one, as well as Melvin Roberts, who is our Queensland Senator in One Nation.
Now, you and I have a little bit in common. We both worked in recruitment. I don't know how long you were working in that field before, but one of the things for people who don't understand things about recruitment, it gives you a really good opportunity to learn how to read people and understand people pretty well. So that, plus the other HR roles that you've had working in the real corporate Australia, with the two new swear-ins for One Nation, what are their backgrounds and what do you think makes them really good additions to One Nation?
They speak from their heart. What you see is what you get. I think they genuinely care. They're good people. They've got fight in them when they need to have fight. They respect and understand that their role and that they've been elected and it's a privilege. Um, there's no smoke and mirrors. There's no private hidden agendas. Uh, and they're just generally good people. You know, you can have a chat to them and sit down, have a coffee or a beer, and you can see that their heart is on their sleeve. They're there for the right reasons. And it's genuine, which unfortunately you just don't see from a lot of people these days entering into politics or in politics.
I think one of my observations, I never really was interested in politics for a long time. I suppose in the last maybe 5 or 6 years, you can't help but be drawn towards it. One of the things I see, particularly in the US, UK, France, Canada, these people that start out in politics well intended, and their behaviors to me exhibit someone that has been coerced or compromised in some way. What are your thoughts on that?
And they do. So one of the first things that our senators need to be aware of being newly elected into One Nation is you will have people approach you very quickly trying to coerce you and entice you over to become independent or into other parties. Why? Because they want to fracture the party. That is their sole intent. They are there to fracture One Nation. So beware. They will put smoke up your rear end. They will tell you everything they think you want to hear. They'll think you're God's gift. Be prepared. It is a tactic to coerce you and disrupt and fracture. So, and it will happen, and it's happened immediately. And you need to be mindful. They're not there. People will try to befriend you in the halls of Parliament, and they're not there for good intentions. They're in there to try to get the ideas and the policies of One Nation, pretend to be your friend, and then use it against you. It happens to everybody. That is unfortunately the dirty game of politics. And anything that they can try to use against you or misconstrued, they will. So, it's a lesson for all new politicians, and it depends on the politician as to whether they're aware of it and whether they have the ability to navigate through it and just be mindful and stand by their values and remember why they're there in the first place.
And without asking you to put her on the spot or say anything negative about her, what's the percentage chance likelihood that the lady that you ran against in the last election, Jackie Lambie, has been compromised?
I don't know whether she's been compromised, but if that's the right word. But the key is what she was originally elected on and what she stood by is very different to what we see as Tasmanians for what she now stands for and what she votes for. So initially, the perception of Jackie Lambie was that she was quite a conservative. However, she tends to vote more with Labor and the Greens, which is not conservative values. Does that mean she's being compromised, or does that mean she's playing a game for her re-election? You choose.
Because I suppose some people could say, well, people are entitled to evolve and change their mind as they learn and acquire. And I've certainly done that over the years as well. Like the difference between that and what I've observed with Jackie, because she's been there long enough, right? And she's very well known as being called flip flop,
Mhm.
which is not something you want as a politician, right? Because if you don't stand for something, you won't stand for anything, as they say. And there's no, you know what, this was what I was elected for. I've come to learn and realize that that is not the most effective way forward. Here's now what I think. Do you ever see that with people like Jackie, for example?
Look, I haven't followed Jackie close enough, to be honest. I don't sit there and watch every interview and everything she's ever done. It does not interest me in the slightest. But from a Tasmanian member, and she's a senator representing a Tasmanian here, yes, if somebody doesn't stand by their values and flip flops, you start to lose question about their integrity, right? So, what's their motivation and what are they actually standing for? It is hard, okay? It is hard to stand by your values or your opinion on something when you get criticized. But you have to stick by it. If people voted you in based on those principles and you flip flop, you lose all integrity. And therefore, I question what your motivations actually are. So yes, you have to be prepared for criticism. You will never ever have everybody agree with you in everything you say, and that's the beauty of democracy, right? But stand by your values, stand by your principles, stand by your constituents, and actually keep your hand up. Yes, if you evolve in your thinking, say so. There's no harm, and actually, people respect that far greater if you say, you know what, I've actually learnt and I was wrong. You know what I mean? I've now since acquired further information, I've evolved my thinking and I was wrong, and this is why. You actually gain more respect from people of being a genuine person and a real person, because we all have those instances in life, versus flip flopping, as you say. So, yes, make the hard decisions, stand by, and stop changing your mind as you do with your underpants or via the wind.
Well, let's use a real world example because one of the topics of contention was around the salmon industry down in Tasmania, which is where you're based, right?
Mhm.
And from what I understand, limited understanding of it, Jackie Lambie wants to basically kill the entire industry for some environmental issues and that kind of thing. Your approach is that, like, hey, let's work with the industry to, it may not be perfect now, but let's figure that out. Let's say next election, you come home in a landslide, there's public opinion, you've done a lot more podcasts, and people got to see how cool you are, like I have. And 2 years goes by, and you come to learn something catastrophic about the salmon industry, for example, how would you then approach pivoting on that?
Own it, claim it. I was wrong. Like anything, whether it be the salmon industry or anything. If you acquire new information that changes your opinion, state what it is and state why and state how. Be honest, be open, be a vulnerable leader. Isn't that what we want from all leaders? Is just to be vulnerable and be honest? I have no problems. I never profess or will never claim to know everything. We should always have growth mindsets and we should always keep learning and evolving our thinking. Stand by what you say. But if you do acquire new information or research that changes your opinion, just own it. Just be transparent. So yes, I will absolutely and wholeheartedly do that. I'll never pretend not to.
And it's interesting talking to someone who clearly lives in integrity with that statement about being honest. It's shocking to you that someone wouldn't be honest, right? Which is kind of why your response is like that. And as you were sharing that, Leah, one of the things I was thinking about, maybe what happens to some of these politicians is they're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. They get in there and they see the snake pit that you're talking about, and then they go, "If it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. That's what I'm going to do." What do you think about that?
Yeah, of course, because they want to keep their seat. Quite often we see politicians not standing up for what's right because they're afraid that they'll lose the vote or it's a contentious issue, so they keep their mouths shut versus speaking up because they don't want any bad publicity or they don't want any negative publicity or they don't want to be disendorsed by the major party because it goes against what the party represents. So it's all about keeping and securing their seat, not about what the best interests are for the constituents or standing by what they said they stood for in the first instance. So yes, it is a hard game. I remember the conversation when I was in school. My mum actually went and saw my granddad, her father, and she said, "Dad, I'm thinking about going into politics." So this is before she ran for Oxley when she very first got elected, and she was under the banner of Liberals when she was endorsed. And my granddad, who was one of the hardest workers and most genuine men you could ever meet in your life, he was devastated. He said, "What for? Why would you run? It's a dirty game. Why would you put yourself through that?" And I remember I was actually in the room for the conversation and my mum got cranky with him. And she said, "Dad, if no one stands up and does anything, nothing will ever change. And you sitting there not wanting me to do, you're being exactly like one of those. I need to fight. I need to stand up. I'm prepared for it to be a dirty game. Well, holy dooly, I don't think we quite understood how bad of a game it would be, what mum would go through over the next 30 years. And she's always stood by that. So there are people there that are willing to actually do the right thing and stand by their values. And I'd say mum is one of the very few from what I've seen. It's how do we identify the genuine and the people there for the right reasons and get behind them?
And I can attest to that, folks. If you haven't seen the interview we did with Senator Pauline Hanson, find it here, whether you're on YouTube or Rumble, wherever it might be. It's a brilliant interview in her office. I'm one of the few people allowed access. Don't ask me how I did it, but I researched the heck out of your mum, and I was very well prepared when I got in there, and I was blown away at just how genuine your mum came across and how she was, how she treated my wife. She hugged us. Not traditional things becoming of a stoic politician. And it's funny going out and talking to people when I tell them I've interviewed your mum and I show them the clip, this little 8-second clip of me sitting in her desk, asking your mum to get me a cappuccino, seeing this unbelievably humorous side of your mum, which people adore. And even the ones that were diehard, brainwashed like I was, can see a glimmer there, and you can see something shifts in them. That's not the behavior of someone who's a racist and a bigot and a sexist and whatever the ist thing that they decided to do. But I suppose to explain to people why you're now involved in this after years of being in the corporate space and being a mum of 2 great kids, married, pretty good life down there in Tasmania. Why would you go and do this to yourself?
Good question. It's really funny. So since mum got into politics, because of what I've seen her go through and also the impact on myself and my siblings through that period, I have tried to keep well and truly away from it. Then heightened even more so once I had my own children to protect my family so that they don't go through what I went through as a child as well. My number one priority is to look after my children and raise good boys. So yes, why? Good question. Mum's been trying for a very long time to get me into politics because of the type of person I am and my background and my character. She feels I would do a very good job and bring that to the floor of Parliament. I kept saying no way because of what I've been through and what she's been through. You've got to have rocks in your head if you want to put yourself in that situation. But I suppose the key turning point for me has been the last few years because of my children. You know, your number one priority is your children. You want them to be raised well, to be resilient, to be kind, to be good people, and to have a good life themselves. You give everything you possibly can and you make the sacrifices for them. But I've seen so much change in the last 10 years in particular, and your priority and your outlook changes. So the future that I see heading for our children has caused me great concern. I think about the education system that going through at the moment as a mum and what I see. I see the problems with the health system and accessing health. I see housing, will my children ever be able to own a home where it used to just be a passageway that you'd save and you'd work really hard and you'd acquire your home, the Australian dream. Well, that's eroding enormously and if not completely out of reach for many. So you reach a point and you say, even though I don't want to be in the limelight, even though I'm scared or I'm afraid of putting myself through what my mother has been through or exposing my children to that type of situation, the tipping point now that if I don't stand up and fight for them outweighs the risks. So how do I teach my children at the same token to be strong, to have a voice, to be resilient and fight for what you believe for other people and the best intentions? And that's what I need to live by for them and be a good role model and help fight for their future and other children's future as well, because I do not see or have faith that things are going to change. It's only going downhill.
Do you know, or has Pauline passed on to you the information, if it's available, what has happened to Australia in the last 30 years, for example? Is there a singular cause, or is it a multitude of different little micro issues that have compounded?
Yeah, it is a multitude of issues. The cost of living, the economy, the housing, the immigration, the inequity. There's so many issues that have compounded to where we are now. So I think the underlying issue is the erosion of common sense and multinationals or the government lining their pocket, not having the right intentions for the people, Australians. So the way of life has significantly shifted. So there's a lot of issues that need to be tackled to peel back and get back to the grassroots and address the issues and fix the way of life again.
If you had to join forces with some of the minor parties, Senator Rennick, and like, if you could choose, if you were forced to choose, rather, I'll put you on the spot, who would you prefer to join forces with in order to get the outcomes that you're looking to achieve?
Good question. I know there's been a lot of talk about the minor parties or need to amalgamate with One Nation or One Nation amalgamate with the minor parties. However, in my experience, it comes back to what's their true intentions and can that actually be achieved? One Nation or Mum Pauline have had conversations and certainly with some of these minor parties or leaders about, hey, coming to One Nation or amalgamating or what can we do to join forces? Then it comes back to their egos and their intention. What's their motivation? Where your values do not align or where your motivations do not align, it will not work.
Hmm.
So, for example, there are senators in the last election that they were offered to come over One Nation, but they wanted to be top of the ticket and they wanted to boot off other people who have been there for a very long time in One Nation. Now, as the leader of the party, Pauline, you tell me, is she a good person if she says, sure, come over, stomp over the candidate that I already have, that has done the hard yards, who's been loyal for a decade, and put you first for a popularity vote? Is that the right thing to honour and respect the person who's done the hard yards? Sorry, but not going to do that. She needs to live by her values and do the right thing by the people that have stuck by the party and done the right thing for the voters who've continually fought for them. Or you've got another major political party that wants to buy you out and offer you this ridiculous amount of money and take complete control and destroy the framework of the party and not respect the voters or the ability for our members to have a say. Where where these other parties or other leaders' values and motivations are not true or genuine, it does not work. It has been explored and it won't work. I hope that there are others that do have the right intentions, and I hope that will become a little bit more prevalent over the next few years because we need to make change, but I just haven't seen that yet, unfortunately.
Great answer, by the way. Um, I think it when people start to go down the rabbit hole with the stuff, they can start to see the complexity of the stuff. And one of the things I was thinking about as you're sharing that, Lee, was like, I don't know whether this is even possible, but let's say you were somehow elected as the ambassador for Australia to the United States,
Mhm.
right? Let's say it's tomorrow you get the call up. How would you approach managing or not managing, dealing with the Trump administration?
A lot of listening, a lot of learning. I think that's the first thing. People go in thinking they know everything and think they understand and they know the right pathway. Relationships is important. Getting to form genuine relationships, understanding each other's motivations, learning who's who. Back to your point about reading behavior and understanding people, you really need to understand who they are, why they're doing what they're doing, and what their real intent or purpose is. So take the time to develop that and to understand, to read the room. Once you develop that and understand it, then you can work with them better. Quite often people go in from the top or from the side and profess to know everything or tell everybody how it needs to work. It's just ego at the end of the day. You've got, no matter who an individual is, and this is what our politicians need to do, which I actually do not see happening today, and very few do this. It shouldn't matter who you are or where you come from, what your party alliance is, etc. We should all be able to work together, respect diversity in opinion, respect diversity in views, but have the ability to work and collaborate together. diversity in views is a good thing, right? Because if you can debate and stretch each other's thinking, you're actually going to get better outcomes. Rather than having your ego up or a wall up because I don't like this person, I refuse to work with them, or I walk out of the Senate floor because this individual's speaking. Have a bit of respect for each other. Understand your purpose and your role. It's to collaborate, it's to work effectively. But instead, what we see from parties today, just because someone is the Greens or just because someone is Labor or One Nation, they immediately get their walls up and they say, I will not work for them. I'll vote against that bill that they put up just because they put it up. They forget their core purpose of why they're there. It's to represent the people and get the best outcomes we have. Why is it so many politicians stick too far in their on their train tracks, or and create division, or don't even debate or have good conversation because they move away from who raised the issue, regardless of what the issue is, what the core matter is. And that's what I want to see from our politicians, and that's what I can offer, and that's my point of difference. And that's what I've been trying to do in Tasmania as well. I've been collaborating with different people across different party groups and independents down here. We may not agree on everything, but that's okay. We have good debate, we support each other where we do align, and we push for the right outcomes for the people. Have the conversation. That's what every Australian actually wants from the members of parliament. And that's what we try to do in One Nation as well.
It's a very grown-up, mature approach really seen in modern politics, I've gotta say. And, it's funny, I think about what I would do in the situation if I was the ambassador, right? What I wouldn't do is I wouldn't publicly tweet my discontent for the sitting president like
No,
Kevin Rudd did.
not a
And
good move.
and one of the things I think about, and there's two things I want to ask you. What's the oath that the senators or the politicians are required to swear in when they first get elected?
Look, I've never been sworn in myself, so I don't know exactly what that is, but very good question.
I wonder what it is. I've never thought of it before. What is the commitment when you sign in? Is it like, I'm just going to show up and collect my pension? Is that the only oath that they're swearing these days?
Look, I'm not sure, to be honest. I haven't asked that question. Maybe that's something I need to ask, and inquire about.
You know what? Let's in real time. Thank goodness we've got infinite intelligence at our fingertips these days. Just bear with us 1 second because we can
YouTube,
edit this part. No. This is ChatGPT. What is the oath that Australian politicians have to agree or swear to when they first get elected into Australian politics? Let's see what AI has to say for itself. Okay, so they must make either an oath of allegiance or an affirmation of allegiance, okay, before taking the seat. Both are prescribed by Section 42 of the Australian Constitution and the Oaths Act from 1900. And the oath of allegiance for those swearing on the Holy Book is, I, Laban, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty's King Charles III, his heirs and successors according to law. So help me God.
That's
Okay.
yeah.
So why do we care about King Charles? His heirs and successors according to law.
That's right. Didn't someone, a former politician, say hairs instead of air? Well, current politicians say hairs instead of ears because they didn't agree with it.
That's not that's not their fault. That's the failed education system, Lee.
No, that was deliberate. That was deliberate. I
So
won't say hairs, I promise.
so I don't think that's convincing enough. I don't know.
I reckon you and I should write something, right? Let's propose it. What do we want our politicians to swear by and live by as they represent us?
Give me a few examples that would relate to similar to the Hippocratic Oath in the medical system.
How about
Okay.
do no harm?
So here's a parliamentarian's code of conduct for Australia. While not a formal oath, MPs are bound by codes that emphasise acting with integrity, serving the public interest, upholding the law and constitution, comparable to a doctor's duty to do no harm. And then there's a judicial oath. I will do right to all manner of people according to law without fear or favour, affection or ill will, used by judges or magistrates, emphasises impartiality, justice and moral integrity. So here's the issue with this stuff, Lee, just in my humble opinion, right? And what does my opinion matter? How many people do you know are okay with breaking promises to themselves these days, let alone other people. Let's talk about that for a second.
The vast population, unfortunately. I would say we do. It's human nature, unfortunately. Even you think about you set yourself goals or you tell yourself you will or you won't do this and situations arise and you break your own promise to yourself and then you make an excuse for as to why you've done it. Exactly what you were saying about politicians before. You get elected on a certain stance and then you get in and you've cast your vote or change your mind, or your opinion or flip flop. We make excuses as to what's informed or let ourselves to change. Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I might have shared this when we spoke on the phone the other day. When I met this mum at the playground. Long story short, she was there because the relationship was at a heightened state of just about collapse. And the husband had some issues with alcohol. I'd never said to tell her to leave this guy or whatever. People often share things with me that they don't share with anyone for whatever reason. And I said to her, after we've been speaking for half an hour or so, I said, do you mind if I share something with you? And she said, yeah. I said, how many more? Have you ever threatened to leave him previously if he exhibits this behavior? She said, yes, a couple of times. And I said to her, how many more times are you going to break that promise to yourself before the wheels fully come off? And she sort of put her head down. And in that moment, she realized that the inaction, the cost of breaking that word for a situation that was not her fault, but had become her responsibility necessarily. And I'm pleased to report that because of the action that she took after that, a couple of weeks later, she did leave him temporarily. And
Yeah.
because of the shock to his system and realizing that this was serious, he went and got help. And now that marriage is back on track. And it was 100% gone.
Yeah.
And now it's back on track. And so it's a good lesson, I think, for people. You don't need to, even if you talk about setting goals, and I understand goals aren't always hit, but in terms of what are the things that I can say to myself that are promises that I can keep?
Yeah.
Start small and build that momentum. And even if you do it 95% less than what you used to, you're going to be in an infinitely better place because that will endear you to people. People know that you'll call them back when you say you're going to call them back, when you're going to show up. Little things like that they can rely and trust. And that inspires other people, Lee. And I can see that happening in the infantile stages of your political journey, that if you can maintain the way that you're showing up in the world now, I think it will very quickly spiral upward into a position where people adore you for your brutal honesty about yourself and not being afraid to say, I made a mistake, because you started that practice at a very young age, inspired largely in part from your mum by the sounds of it.
Correct. Yeah.
There's not a lot of information regarding your home life and father and that kind of thing, but what were the positive attributes that your father gave you?
My dad was a plumber. I never saw him take a day off my whole life. Never once did we go on a family holiday. Never once did we have a time away from work. So whilst my mother is an incredibly hard worker and equally works 7 days in the shop growing up, and obviously as a politician in my later teens, but my father equally was a workaholic and ran his small business. So yeah, the work ethic that both my parents have installed upon me and the responsibility, I'm grateful that I've learnt that from both my parents, and that's the type of individual that I am. They've shaped that into me as well. So yes, extremely hard worker, say what you're going to do and I live by that as well. Have responsibility.
And I think there's a great lesson for everyone there, at least coming from grey stock, folks, because I think one of the observations a lot of people are making is that the current politicians ain't singing for their supper in the way that they maybe used to. And we know certainly since the pandemic that work ethic has definitely shifted. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that people are fundamentally unhappy with themselves.
Yeah.
And the work that used to bring them a lot of joy and purpose it's had the life sucked out of it because their paychecks are depleted, and being able to earn a living is just like front of mind with everyone. I don't know. Am I on the right track, do you think?
Look, I think it's hard. Society has changed over the last few decades. I think about when I was being brought up as a child. My parents worked hard to get their paycheck, but it was still a sense of community and that everybody was involved, that social connection was there. Kids could play in the street. On school holidays, mum wouldn't know where we were. We'd be off riding our bikes. We'll see you at see you at dark. We'll be home for tea. But in my situation, because mum's in the shop, I had to be home to cook tea for the family and do the chores. So we had more responsibility. We had chores, but we had more freedom as well. And we didn't have so many pressures. It was a safer place to grow up. So you think about the significant shift, even the last, what I'm 40, nearly 42, you think about the shift since my upbringing. I can't let my kids go out of my sight. I can't let them play. I don't live in a cul-de-sac, so it's not a safe environment, but there aren't any children nearby. But instead, parents need to escort their children on play dates. You can't let them go down the street and play. Then you've got social media, you've got significant bullying, you've got the parents trying to manage working more hours or trying to bring in greater income because of cost of living increases as well. So parents aren't able to spend as much time with their children as what we had that opportunity. A lot of parents and families are disconnected. They're not just around the corner. You used to buy a house that used to be in the same street as your parents. So the families stay connected or raised together, where families seem to be greater dispersed across the country or internationally as well. So there's a compound of factors that as to why our way of life have changed. So it does put a lot of pressure on parents and adults in general to try to have that work-life balance, as you say. So it is difficult. Some people have worked out what that magic bucket is for them that fills their cup and refreshes them, through hobbies or opportunities. But then you add parents in there. People say to me, "What's your hobby? What do you do to refresh your bucket?" And I say, "I can't remember. My eldest son is turning 11, and I haven't had any personal time or time for myself since I was then. When they grow up and fly the coop, I'll remember what my hobbies are." But that's okay because my kids are my world and that's my priority and that's my number one and that's the sacrifice you make and that's my responsibility. And what gives them joy and happiness gives me joy and happiness. So your priorities shift. But yes, everything has changed significantly in the last few decades as well. So there's a lot of pressure on people.
Do you mind if I ask you what I think might be a really tough question?
Sure.
You just touched on, and I love and appreciate your vulnerability with regards to the emphasis on your kids, which is supposedly the main reason why you sacrificed the wonderful life that you had for something unknown and unbelievably exciting and treacherous potentially. What would you do based on the information you had now? Let's say a decade from now, things have progressed where you are, let's say mum's retired and you are the leader of the party. Public sentiment for One Nation has swelled to record levels and you end up being prime minister, right? Just hypothetical. What say you are approached by some nefarious entities that say toe the line with this particular agenda or ideology, or we will destroy your entire family?
Hmm.
Like, we will take out your children and your husband and people that you care about. How would you approach that situation based on what you know now?
It's funny you say that because I was actually put in that same situation as a child myself. So, not that mum was ever the PM and not that, so let's shift the narrative a little bit in the situation. But I was not far from the age of my oldest son right now when I received my first death threat. So mum was in Parliament. She was a politician. She'd received numerous death threats, but one came through that was actually quite serious and threatened my life personally. The federal police acted immediately because these things are alerted. So yes, I've been in that situation as a child. Now, did mum change her views or keep quiet? No way. In fact, she even got louder. But you put steps in to protect your children, to look after them and alert the right authorities. So I was removed and safeguarded in that situation. The funny story is, I was quite independent as a child. Obviously, you had to be in different lifetime back then. I was due to catch the school bus home, but back then you didn't have mobile phones, right? So due to catch the school bus, I hated the school bus ride home. It took forever. A friend said, "Don't worry, I'll give you a lift home." Perfect. We'll just swing by her house after school for a bit. So I failed to catch the school bus. Lo and behold, the federal police got this alert at the time, decided to chase down my school bus, pull the school bus over, storm the school bus looking for me, and everyone's, "Who are you?" I wasn't on the bus. Panic alert set in. They eventually found me when I got home. Well, I got a bit of a talking down from my mum, as you can imagine. She was quite stressed because I was MIA, but safe and home. And then I went into hiding in a secure place for a period of time until it was safe to go return back to school or come home. So to your point, what would I do? My reaction, I'm not the individual, and I think you can see from the upbringing and the parenting that I've had, is you do not let people dictate you or control you, and threats are not going to achieve that either. It's about ensuring you put the right safeguards in place to protect your family. It's about not being naive to the fact that these things do happen and they will happen. But the moment you compromise the person you are and let them win, you have failed. So ensuring that you look after your kids and your family is number one for me, but being prepared and doing it in advance.
So you're effectively saying that you are willing to die for this cause, potentially. Is that what I'm hearing?
I hope not. I hope that's not the situation. But at the end of the day, no, I don't want to ever be in that situation, or no, I don't want to ever put my children in a situation. Of course not. Who would? And you do everything you can to protect yourself and protect others. But if we don't be genuine as to who we are and stand up, then nothing will ever change. You've got to be prepared for the hard yards. And I've witnessed that in my life. I've seen the hard yards mum has gone through. I've experienced the knock on effect myself in many different ways as her child. I'm not naive to the fact, but how do I just prepare myself and go in it eyes wide open, basically?
Wasn't an easy question, given you
No.
6
And
months into the game.
I hope that never happens, but yes.
Well, I think it's an important one, Lee, because, some of the people that I interviewed in the early days of the show, I platformed them because I really resonated with the message, whatever it might be. And my intuition and backing that has come through a few times, and they've ended up blowing up. Like being on the biggest shows on the planet, and they were on my little itty bitty show back then when I had 10 subscribers, 5 of whom were families, who have since unsubscribed. And the ones that are true to their word, like I'm at a level now with my own stuff, and I'm kind of asking this for myself in many ways. My relationship with Source or God, whatever you want to call it, is I believe that we are these infinite spiritual beings, and we inhabit the human form, maybe many, many times. I don't know 100%. And what's the point of living when have capitulated and have sold out my integrity and my core belief? What is the point?
Mhm.
And that might sound a bit woo-woo for some people, but that's kind of my take on things, which is why I decided to platform somewhat polarizing characters. Because I just want to know the truth so I can make a more informed decision. But B, I've benefited so much from other very much bolder, more brave, courageous people than I that platformed people like that even earlier. And some people that died as a result, Rashid Buttar and there's other stuff that was speaking out during COVID. These people that have been, rumors of poisoning and stuff, who knows what really happened. But if more people did that, it's like bullying in school. If Kevin Rudd was bullied at school, instead of running and telling the principal, which he probably did, if he'd stood up to the bully and corralled a couple of the tough mates or some siblings or something, maybe he wouldn't be posting mean tweets about a sitting president these days,
Yeah.
What do you reckon? Am I on the right track, or am I just Have I missed the point
No,
completely?
you are. And look, it was funny, Mum and I were talking about this the other day. Something similar about what type of person do you want to be or what type of people we are. You know, Mum and I were talking about neither of us want to just cruise through life day in, day out. What's the purpose? Both of us have always been attracted to opportunities or roles or positions that enable us to have a positive impact. There's got to be a greater purpose as to why we're here. And for both of us, that purpose is about having a positive impact on others and doing good for other people, adding value, giving meaning. And if there's one thing, but at the end of your life, you can say, "Oh, I helped someone else," or "I helped improve things," then my job's done. You know what I mean? And that can be done through many different ways and channels. And Mum has done that in her political career countless times. And I've done it in my career to date in other jobs. And they're the type of jobs that have attracted me, you know, change and transformation and culture and improvement, those sorts of positions. But now I want to shift that experience and shift that capability into adding benefit and positive outcomes for the greater community. And that's what I really want to drive and achieve. I don't just want to be on the merry-go-round of life. That's just doesn't sit with my inner core or inner person in any way, shape, or form. And you're right, the hard knocks of bullying, etc., that we go through, it builds resilience. It's how you take those negative experiences in life and learn and develop and grow from them, sorry. I'm not one, you know, I've had knocks in life. I've had some shitty moments in my childhood and I've had some crappy moments growing up. Sure, we all do. But I'm not going to sit there and say, poor me. I'm going to say, well, what did that teach me? No one's going to knock me down. I am responsible for myself. I'm going to grow, I'm going to learn, and it makes me more determined and it gives me more fight and tenacity. And I keep going. And I'm really fortunate to have some very strong role models in my life that were able to teach me those values because I benefited from it enormously and I live by it. So to your point, you know, if somebody is bullied, poor me, you know, no. How do I spin that around? How do I take that fire and use it for good purpose? And that's the type of person I am.
Fantastic. And I'm guessing off the back of that you're a fan of reinstating castle law countrywide so that people can defend themselves against home intruders.
Well, shouldn't you? I mean, obviously within reason. You don't want to instill harm and I don't provoke violence in any way, but absolutely, if somebody were to come in my home, I will be defending myself and I will be defending my family, no matter the consequences. If anyone puts my kids in position, watch out, I'm Mama Bear, you know? Look out.
And just a side note, folks, Lee and her husband do a lot of hunting and fishing. So do with that information what you will. And I will say, my wife and I spent some time living in Utah when we were in America. Predominantly Anglo-Saxon population, heavily Mormon. One of the cleanest cities I've ever seen in my entire life. Open carry and concealed carry laws, all right? It means you can have a gun on the outside of your jeans. I had never felt so safe in all of my life because prevention is the best cure. And you know that if you go into someone's front yard in the great state of Utah, you're going to end up in an obituary notice. That is 100%. So nothing really happens. The kids are running around, riding their bikes to school and all this other stuff. It's really interesting. And I think once people start to understand, oh, what is this thing that they're actually talking about? Because Tasmania was the site of the Martin Bryan, situation, the shooting years ago. And there's a whole list of potential controversies that are coming up now about how true that actually was to try and bring through these gun laws. And Jacinta Ardern did that in New Zealand, where I'm from, after that Muslim mosque shooting back in 2019. I think it might have been 51 some odd people killed. Terrible tragedy.
Mm.
But I don't think the solution is taking everyone's guns, because last time they did that, you end up with countries like, I don't know, Venezuela, a few other these countries. So bit of a side topic, something we could talk about maybe on another episode if you'd like to come back and share as things progress, Lee. Two things. Did you know your husband? Were you guys friends before you guys met and got married?
We actually met in Queensland. We were out, oh golly, I think I was about 22 at the time, 23. So we met and been together for 19, nearly 20 years, roughly. For a
Congratulations.
while now. Yeah. So young and silly night out on the Gold Coast where I was living and on the dance floor. In comes my now husband who could not dance to save himself, looked like a total fool, but for some reason I was attracted to it, not his dance moves. A group of friends all got talking and yeah, we just ended up, becoming friends as a group and next minute started dating and yeah, got married 11 years ago.
Well, congratulations. The reason I asked, the question I wanted to ask you was, what was his response when he first found out you were Pauline Hanson's daughter?
My Well, he's a Tasmanian, obviously, Tasmanian born and bred, and he moved to Queensland at the time for football. So he knew of her, but he didn't know everything about her. No, just a little bit of a, "Oh, okay." And then I think the hardest part, whether it be my husband now or former, when I was younger and I had a couple of boyfriends prior to that, the fun moment's always bringing them home to meet mum for the first time. Mums can be a very intimidating woman and very direct.
Surely not.
So you've got to, you've got to give mum the talk beforehand. Now, don't be too hard and just don't say anything that too far-fetched, mum, and you gotta tell your mum, and equally the partner as well, but no. He was probably, to my benefit, not fully across mum's political career, so it probably went to my benefit, I'd say.
Well, this is really before social media kind of kicked off in the way that it did, right? So, what a blessing that might have been. Lee, I'm sure we could talk about lots more things. If there's anything that you really want to crowbar in here, speak now, if you ever hold your peace. But if not, how do people find you, support you, stay abreast of what you are sharing? Because it's good stuff.
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, for me, still building my profile and still learning and growing. It hasn't been long since the election. I had a very whirlwind 4 weeks of campaigning before the last federal election. So I am being quite active in my Tasmania community as well as on Facebook. So they're probably my main contact points is Lee Hansen, Pauline Hanson's One Nation via Facebook. So anyone can reach out to me, contact me via Messenger through Facebook as well. Also, my email address is online on the One Nation account as well, One Nation website. So I've actually had a lot of people reaching out to me post the election, which is I've really appreciated. People in need, people needing help, people not knowing where to go to when they reach issues or concerns, whether it be individuals and personal circumstances, parents with trouble through the educational school system, or whether it be charities that just need support and help and guidance as well. So I've actually been really privileged to still keep working and only growing in how I'm helping my community, regardless of being a politician, which I'm not, but I'm really privileged that people are reaching out to me and I'm trying to help every way in which way I can.
And for any podcasters that are listening or media people that are interested in platforming Lee, I highly recommend you get in early. It's like buying Bitcoin when it's a few cents. We can tell you that now, folks. How many podcasts have you done?
Yeah, I've done one before an interview for during the campaign, during the election time, but should I say you're my second? Is that the right way to put it?
That'll do. That'll do. And I got to say, Lee, I've interviewed a lot of people and I've been on a lot of shows. There's not many people that can hold themselves and speak as eloquently as you can on only your second ever podcast. I know you've done a little bit more media stuff, but you're still fresh as a daisy and you should be really proud. So I'm looking forward to watching your growth and your journey. Do you have any concluding thoughts for our amazing audience today?
I suppose the only thought I want to give the audience to take away from, I understand there's a lot of misconceptions about my mom or about One Nation, and therefore that impacts on me, and people may have preconceived ideas as to who they think I am. By association, I'm Pauline's daughter. One thing that my challenge is, or my mission is, if we put it that way, every challenge you turn it into an opportunity. And my key is to try to ask people just to educate themselves. You know, there's a lot of misinformation, there's a lot of misunderstandings out there about One Nation or about Pauline. A lot of that has been led by the media over decades. Please take the time to understand what the party stands for. Reach out to me, reach out to Pauline, and understand who we are and what it is we're actually representing. Don't believe everything you see or hear. You know, take the time to educate yourself. Now has never been more an important time of our country's future and the political agendas being driven to really understand who people are. Just don't believe and see what you hear. You know, we are good people, we are genuine people, and we're here for the right reasons. So yeah, just take the time. You know, do a bit of research on the One Nation website, reach out to me directly. If you have any questions, I will always be honest with you and upfront. And if I don't know the answer, I will find out and do my best to find out.
Does that sound like the youngest child of the worst racist in Australian history? I don't think so. Ladies and gentlemen, Pauline Hanson.